right, artists, now that we know all about lighthouses and how they can remind us that there is always light if only we are brave enough to see it, let's get started making our art project. Ready? Let's get our supplies.
You're going to need your art packet, a pencil and an eraser, a black or gray pen or marker, colored pencil or crayon to outline your lighthouse. And you'll need some colors: red, gray, blue, green. You can color with crayons or pencils or markers or paint. Here is the art packet that you got in your supply pickup. The flyer is taped to your art paper at the bottom. Leave the tape on so you can trace the border. The next page is the back of your art paper. The Lighthouse project instructions are on the back of the information flyer. If you close the packet so the tape is on the outside and flip over the whole packet, the back page is the front of your art paper. If you flip the whole packet over, you'll be able to see through your art paper to the border and lighthouse behind. So our first step is to trace the border. If you hold your paper up to a bright window, you can see the border, the rectangle around the paper, and the lighthouse. So use your pencil and press very lightly to make the border, the rectangle around your paper. If you want, you can use a small piece of tape to tape up the whole packet onto your window, and then you can have both of your hands free to trace and look at what you're working on. Just ignore all the words on the paper. Just pay attention to the rectangle, the border, and the lighthouse. And when you're all done tracing, you can pull the tape off the window. And you can gently pull the tape off your art paper too. Don't worry if the tape tears your paper a little bit. You can just paint right over it when we get to the painting part. Another option for tracing is to use a light box. Lots of artists use a light box for tracing their drawings. These are some light boxes made especially for art students. You just put your paper on top of the light box and turn on the light. Just ignore all the words on the paper and trace your rectangle border. Make a very light pencil line around that rectangle border. We will color all the way to all the edges of the paper, the very edges, but we'll keep the most important things inside this rectangle. You can trace the lighthouse the same way if you choose to. Just trace around all of the dark lines. Ta-da! It'll look like this when you're done if you trace it with the window tracing method. Or you can choose to do a pencil rubbing transfer. Take the side of your pencil lead and color all over the info side. You want to cover the whole area of the lighthouse. You can hold your paper up to the light or the window to see if you've covered the whole lighthouse area with your pencil rubbings. When the back of the lighthouse is all covered with pencil, fold the flyer back so the pencil is touching the front of the art paper. So what you see on the outside is the lighthouse project. Now you're going to trace on top of all of the dark lines. The pencil that you rubbed onto the back of your flyer will transfer onto your art paper as you trace and push down with your pencil. So trace over all of the lines, pushing down really hard. And you can pull the paper back to keep checking and make sure you trace all of the lines. Sometimes I forget a few of the lines. So here's what it looks like after. On the left side is the paper I made tracing from the window. And on the right side is the drawing I made using the pencil transfer method with the rubbing and the pencil. Neither one of these is completely perfect, and they're both just fine. Keep your papers taped together for now. And now we're going to trace over all the pencil lines on the front of our art paper. You can use a black or gray pen or marker or crayon. Here are a few of the pencils and markers and pens that I had at my house. Some of these pens are waterproof and some are not, which means if I put the pen down before I paint and use watercolor or paint with waters, the waterproof pens won't bleed apart or smear, but the waterproof pens would melt away or bleed if I used a water paint. So if you use a pen that is not waterproof, like a Crayola marker, just make sure that you paint around that part and don't put your water and paintbrush on the marker that is not waterproof. Smaller pen nibs or tips make thinner lines, teeny tiny little lines. Bigger pen nibs or tips make thicker lines. Like the Crayola markers can make a thin line, and then if you use the side of the marker, they can make a nice thick line. So take a look at what pen or marker you have at your house and how thick or thin it might be, and whether it's waterproof or not. Keep your papers taped together for now so you can check your outlines. Sometimes it can get confusing. You might want to hold it up to the window again to make sure that you've traced all of the lines or that they're all in the right spot. The pencil lines can get confusing, but it's okay. So now we're going to trace over all the pencil lines with our marker or crayon or pen. After we trace over all the lines with a crayon or marker or pen, we can use our eraser to erase all the pencil lines. Erase gently so you don't smear the outlines that you made. And then you can brush away all the eraser bits. Ta-da! This is what it looks like when it's all done after you've traced over your pencil lines and erased all the pencil. On the left is the drawing that we made tracing from the window, and on the right side is the drawing that we made using the pencil transfer method. Our next step, step number 2, is to add the ocean and land to our painting. We'll do the ocean first. We will draw a straight line behind the lighthouse. This will be our horizon. The horizon is where the earth meets the sky. Put your horizon line below the middle of the page. Pick a spot between the middle of the lighthouse and the bottom of the lighthouse and draw your horizon line there. You can decide where. A higher line will make the horizon look farther away. Start the line on each side of the lighthouse so it makes it look like it goes behind the lighthouse. Draw a very light pencil line for your horizon. You can use a ruler to make a straight line, or even another piece of paper, or you can hold it up to the window again to see the guidelines through your art paper. Now that you've done your ocean horizon, let's do the land. Just like the ocean, make your lines start on each side of the lighthouse so it looks like it goes behind the lighthouse. A longer line higher up will make it look like it is farther away. A shorter line lower down will look more like a hill. You choose where your land goes. Draw a very light pencil line. If you don't like where you drew your land, you can erase it, or just draw a new line where you want it to be. If you draw very lightly with your pencil, you can erase the pencil line you don't like or just paint over the lines you don't like. And now when you have your ocean and your land, we can add color. First, before we get started with color, let's remove the tape from the front of our art paper. Just carefully peel it back. And it's okay if the tape tears the paper a little bit. We can just paint right over that. And before you start painting, make sure to keep your painting area clean. Put down some extra paper or a painting mat to protect your table or your desk. And we're going to start with the lighthouse and the lightest color on the lighthouse. We're not going to paint the roof just yet. Let's look at the picture we traced. We're going to leave the white parts white, and we're going to color the dark parts a light gray on our painting. A light gray will make it look just shadowy. You can use a gray crayon or marker or gray paint. If you have paint, watercolor, or tempera paint, you can make gray paint with just a little bit of black and a little bit more water. I used a plate to mix paint with water. You can use a paper plate or any piece of plastic works good. The lid of your paint container would be great. You can also make gray paint with a little bit of black paint and some white paint. Once you have your gray marker or paint, you want to paint or color inside the outlines that you drew before. All the parts that were dark blue on your project instructions, let's paint a little bit gray, but not the roof. Whoops, I put gray on the roof. It's okay. After you have all of the dark parts painted gray, we can make the roof red, just like our lighthouse. And now our lighthouse is done. Now it's time to do the sky. Try to make the lightest blue you can. If you're using crayons, you can press lightly to make a light blue, or markers, choose the lighter color blue, or if you're using paint, you can make light blue paint with blue paint and white paint and a little bit of water. Just don't use too much water when you're painting, or your paper might start to melt. Paint or color around the edges of the lighthouse very carefully. And then paint or color the sky from side to side, all the way from side to side, along following the straight line of the horizon. If you color or paint in circles, it can also look like clouds. Once you have your whole sky filled in all the way to the edges of the paper, it's time to make the ocean. You can use a darker blue for the ocean. Use a darker blue crayon or marker or paint. You can mix blue paint with a little bit of green paint and a little black paint to make a darker, different color for your ocean. Because the ocean is darker than the sky and a little bit more gray. Paint your ocean between the sky and the land. And when you have your ocean all filled in, then you can make the land. Paint or color very carefully around the edges of your lighthouse. And paint or color your land from side to side, following the lines of your hill. You can make the bushes around the lighthouse by painting or coloring in a different direction, like circles or spiky bushes. You can use a darker green or mix some yellow or blue or black paint in with your green paint to make a different shade of green. And then you're all done. If you choose to sign your art, your painting, make sure you sign inside the border you first drew. If you can't see your pencil lines under your paint, you can hold your art paper up to the window again. Nice work, artists. Beautiful.